It is so good to be back on the mic this week. I'm Htown Wheelhouse with Locked on Astros. I'm joined with Ben Dubose, and we're going to be talking about the sweep of the Detroit Tigers. Although that may not be a monumental feat in the baseball world, it is something that the Astros have struggled in the past with weaker teams towards the end of the season. They are 7 games away from clinching their another AOS title. Hunter Brown is on the scene. Cristain Javier's playoff push, and Yordan Alvarez's hands. What do we have to make about that? So we're going to talk about that, some communication issues, and all these things on this edition of Locked on Astros.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Heisman and Brett Htown Wheelhouse Chansey.
We are Locked on Houston Astros, and we're your daily Astros podcast. I'm Htown Wheelhouse. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on TikTok now at Htown Wheelhouse. You can find the show at Locked on Astros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, also on TikTok as well. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I've got none other than the illustrious, the infamous Mr. Ben Dubose. He is Htown Sports. Thanks for joining us. Tell us where they can find you on social media.
Yep, Ben Dubose on Twitter. And then from time to time, I do write for MLB.com. I'm happy to say one of them is actually going to be this Saturday night. So I am going to be covering A's Astros. So there's the Astros tie for you.
There you go. I love it. I mean, we love bringing on guys like yourself because you are a seasoned veteran in the Houston sports market, and your knowledge and your, who you've been able to interview and just your ties to Houston sports. So let's dive right into this because, this Tigers series, you would think, okay, Tigers, Astros, mid-September, ho-hum, right?
Right.
But not so much. I mean, there were some big storylines. I kind of buried the lead. The real lead was probably that Framber Valdez 7-0 shutout, which was
For
just
sure.
amazing. But since we're talking about immediate news and what happened during the day game is Cristain Javier, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts. I mean, this guy is now
Only 2
9 and
hits.
8, only 2 hits, and Ben, his invisible, his command and his control is back. When he first came up, when he hit the scene and he was that rookie, we were like, oh my gosh, what do we get? And he went to the bullpen. He's had his struggles here and there. What do you make of his performance? Do you think he's making enough noise to push for a playoff
So,
spot in the rotation?
so it's interesting. Like Monday night, we talked a lot about how Framber Valdez is being overlooked to an extent because of Justin Verlander. And I would also argue that Cristain Javier is being overlooked because of both Verlander and Valdez. Because, as we talk about Framber being basically the second in the rotation, Javier is at best the third. And so he doesn't get talked about a lot in the Astros because the rotation is so ridiculously loaded. Yet when you look at the season long numbers, I know you can dismiss today and say the Tigers are terrible on offense. That's true. But overall, his ERA now is below 3 for the season. His whip is below 1. His strikeouts per 9 innings is, I believe, entering today, it was 11.8. He doesn't quite qualify among starters, but for perspective, the number one guy in all of baseball in that category is Garrett Cole, or at least number one in the AL, and he's 11.6. So if Javier had just a few more innings to qualify, he would actually lead. I don't know if it's MLB or the American League, but the point is really, really good in terms of strikeouts, just really upper echelon stuff. We've seen it from time to time, not just against the lesser teams, but look back at the no-hitter at Yankee Stadium when he had 7 innings, obviously no hit ball, and struck out 14, and then backed it up with 14 more strikeouts the next game against the Angels. So he has really, really high-end stuff, just nobody talks about it because it's on the same team as 2 Cy Young contenders in Verlander and Framber, in all likelihood the winner in Justin Verlander. But I think we're at a point now. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh no. I just was going to say, and you would think if you follow Astros Twitter that this team was in such disarray and there's so many problems
Yeah.
because of this and that. But keep going because you're making some good points there.
Yeah, well, for me, the numbers are such that even if it's not Verlander or Valdez-esque, those numbers are the type that you have to figure out a way to maximize him in the postseason, be it out of the bullpen, be it as a starter. whatever it may be, you've got to figure out a way when you have a pitcher that good to make sure that he is part of your postseason plans. And honestly, given the composition of this year's team, and given the fact that we've seen him do it this year against upper echelon teams as well, that's something we didn't always see in the past. You may need to end up starting him. There's a couple of things, and I've gone back and forth all season because, I do like Jose Urquidy a lot as well. But the reason I'm sort of leaning now back towards starting Javier, some things have changed in recent weeks. For starters, Lance McCullers has been better than I think any of us would have imagined coming off that lengthy layoff. Nobody knew really what to expect. He's looked absolutely brilliant. The first couple of starts, he was a little bit lucky with the double plays, just some timely balls that went to the right places. Last couple of starts, he's looked really, really good, getting a ton of swing and miss, the velocity, the pitch movement, it's all coming back. When McCullers started coming back, a lot of people were started thinking that you might need to kind of piggyback him in the playoffs and maybe piggyback
Right.
McCullers and Javier. Right now, it's looking like Lance McCullers can be a standalone. And quite frankly, we may be underselling Lance McCullers. For all the talk about him not coming back until August after that long layoff, that may actually be what gives you peak Lance McCullers in the playoffs, because in the past, when he has a high workload, he breaks down. In my opinion, the two best postseason runs for McCullers with the Astros, 2017, in which number one, his 2016 season ended early, had a long off season, and then he also had an injury in the second half of 2017, the regular season. So he came back fresh in September. And then in 2020, when he was absolutely dominant in the LCS against Tampa, well, 2020 was a shortened season. So he has not had that much workload on his arm. And so getting a fresh Lance McCullers may be, the ticket that the Astros really need. And so if you're not going to need a piggyback, then all of a sudden you have to start thinking about, well, when exactly is Cristain Javier going to pitch? Because last year they used him out of the bullpen and he has had success in that role. But last year, especially after the McCullers injury, there were so many question marks in that
Mm.
rotation that you just sort of knew. We weren't sure exactly when, but at some point there's going to be a game the starter in the postseason had to come out in the second, third innings, and you needed somebody like Javier to potentially give you 3, even 4 innings to keep you in a game, which he did in the LCS in Boston. He was instrumental in them winning that series. But this year, when you have Justin Verlander, when you have a better and a more mature Framber Valdez, when you have hopefully a healthy Lance McCullers, you're going to have many more starting pitchers that can get you into the middle, perhaps even late innings of these postseason games. So, in terms of that other spot, you may need to think about sort of quality over quantity. And the quality is Cristain Javier. He's just simply got better stuff than Jose Urquidy or Luis Garcia. That's just the reality of this situation.
Right.
Now, the one argument you could make, especially for Urquidy, I mentioned quality over quantity. Urquidy is a bit steadier. Even though Javier has been fairly consistent this season, like we saw a couple of starts ago in Arlington when he had like 40 plus pitches in the first inning, there's some
Hmm.
starts where Javier can sort of struggle with his command. And
Right.
then, especially in the postseason against better teams, that can sometimes lead to you having to get your bullpen up in the first or second inning. And before you know it, that throws off your entire sort of rhythm
Right.
for a series. And Urquidy's a guy that he doesn't have the upside that Javier does, but Urquidy is unflappable. He doesn't get phased by the moment. He's also very pitch efficient, doesn't walk a lot of guys, doesn't get behind in that many counts. And so I feel like, a year ago it was very important for Dusty to say, hey, like game 2 of the World Series, I just need to feel pretty confident coming off, a high intensity game less than 24 hours before. I need a guy that I just feel pretty confident is going to give me at least 5 innings and is going to be stable. And, a
Yeah.
year ago with the rotation in such flux, I think that was important. Whereas now that you have Verlander, you have Framber, you have, McCullers, and hopefully this lasts for 3 more weeks. I don't think the advantage is so commanding that it can't be revisited. But we'll see if everybody holds their form the last 3 weeks. But right now, I think you've sort of got to gamble on the upside, and that's what Cristain Javier, just those high end numbers, really brings to the table
Yeah.
with this team.
Yeah. I remember one of the first things I wrote for, I believe it was Scout, was about Cristain Javier's Invisible, and
Mhm.
just how people were so mesmerized by the fact that when the ball came out of his hand, they didn't know where the ball was going. It was like, is this a spinning knuckleball? What is going on with this, with the action? And I mean, I know the national media has caught on to it a little bit, but I really don't think that the league really understands, or maybe the league's fans understands, how much of a solid pitching staff that we have from beginning to end. I mean, if you can imagine you take a healthy McCullers and a healthy Verlander last season, I think that World Series might go a little differently. The Braves, I think, just beat us, handedly. That was their World Series. But this year, it makes all the difference, and we know what this offense is capable of. We know this offense has been getting a little bit more consistent lately. I know they only scored 2 runs today. You're gonna have that, but they have really, the right guys have started getting hot at the right times. But you got Javier. You mentioned Urquidy.
Hmm.
Urquidy has the highest run support of any Astros pitcher, 6.65 runs per game when Urquidy pitches. And so when he does tend to give up a lot of singles, a lot of hits, the offense shows up for him, which is a really strange thing. That's why we love baseball, right? It's one of these
Yeah.
weird things. And here, this is a thing. If you want to bet on the Houston Astros going to the World Series, or hey, you want to bet that the Texans will win week 2 and not tie another game, you need to go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games, actually the second week games. Go check it out. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events includes MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, this is what's interesting is we know, because we commentate on the Astros, we talk about them, you talk about them, you write articles on them. We understand the pitching development that this Astros team has done. And if you look at the amount of money they spent on Javier, Urquidy, Valdez, Javier, and what they're getting out of them, you want to talk about bang for your buck. You look on the other side of the coin, the Yankees, hundreds of
Yep.
millions of dollars for one pitcher who has not had a single effect on a single playoff series in a positive way, which is pretty astronomical to say that Garrett Cole has not helped them to really do much more than before he got there. But you've got these pitchers under the radar, and then you've got Hunter Brown come onto the
Yep.
scene. And the movement on his pitch has been, when I watch this kid pitch, Kevin Brown, Jacob DeGrom, those names come to mind. And his dad's name actually happens to be Kevin Brown, not the Kevin Brown, but his command and his moxie. Let me ask you, what do you think his playoff role could be? Because I was thinking, well, he'll pitch good in the regular season, then they'll bring him up next year. They probably won't put him on the playoff roster. But if he's going this good, does he at least? I mean, are the Astros thinking, yeah, this kid's on the playoff roster?
I think there's a decent chance. I really want to see what happens now that Verlander is rejoining the rotation. It looks like Friday, and you presumably see more of Hunter Brown in a relief role because, in my opinion, that's most likely going to be, if he's on the postseason roster, how they use him this year. I just think there's too many proven options when we talk about Javier and Urquidy, guys like that, to potentially consider Hunter Brown as a playoff starter in 2022. Barring injuries. However, I do think it sort of plays into what we were just discussing with Javier, because one reason you might could start Javier, that you probably need a bulk reliever as much this year because you have better starting pitching. If you do, if something goes haywire or if something, God forbid, goes wrong, like a McCullers injury again, then guess what? You do have another starting option with high velocity, Hunter Brown, that could do for you in the bullpen what Cristain Javier did last year and what you might not have if you end up starting Javier in the postseason this year. So that's where I could see Brown having a role. And I want to see him more, that Verlander's back in the rotation. I want to see what happens now that you push Hunter Brown into that bullpen. Can he bump, the 97, 98 mile an hour fastball? Can that get up to even 99 or 100 when he goes out there knowing I'm only pitching for 1 or 2 innings as opposed to, the five,
Hmm.
6, 7 that he's trying to get through as a starter? If he can bump that velocity even more, to me, that's something that I'm really watching for. In terms of the actual game to game, there's going to be a ton of variance. He had a bit more swing and miss against the Rangers than he did against the Tigers. Although, I mean, you can't
Right.
argue with the numbers. I mean, 6 innings, 2 runs is still very effective. And he got better as the game went along. Probably some nerves pitching in front of the home crowd too. But I
Right.
just think that there's going to be a lot of variance because guys are seeing him for the first time. He's seeing major league batters for the first time. And so, in terms of learning each other, for better or for worse, there's going to be a ton of variance the first few times that the guy goes out on the mound. So I'm not really looking so much into like how many swings and misses does he get in a given game. I just want to see how his stuff plays. How can he control it? Because that's the one weakness. That's the one sort of question mark. He does walk a fair share of guys, at least this year at Sugarland. And so, how does that translate to the big league level? Can he stay in the zone or close enough to the zone to get guys to go after pitches, regardless where they miss or not? If he can locate relatively well and throws, a 98 mile an hour fastball with a 95 mile an hour slider, there's only so much, even good hitters can do with those
Yeah,
types of pitches. And then if he's in the bullpen, which I think is more likely his role in the 2022 postseason, can he maybe bump up those velocity numbers, just a tick or two higher? I think that could be really big. But I just think overall, and this sort of ties together what we were talking about with Cristain Javier and now with Hunter Brown. You also have to think about sort of the formula for how the Astros win in 2022. And it's actually very different than in 2021. That 2021 team was offense first. They were near the top of the league
that's
in
true.
every offensive category. They're not bad this year, but they're just simply a good offense. They're not an elite one. And the biggest reason, just the personnel has changed. You've replaced Carlos Correa with a rookie and Jeremy Pena. Michael Brantley's out, and Trey Mancini, Aledmus Diaz, whoever gets the starts, basically in place of Brantley. They're solid hitters, but they're not as good as Michael Brantley in all likelihood. So you have a worse
True.
lineup, and 2022 Alex Bregman is better than 2021. But the flip side is 2022 Yuli Gurriel is worse than 2021. So that kind of comes out a wash. And so the bottom line is in 2021, what you were hoping to do, and that's sort of played into guys like Urquidy that could just sort of give you bulk, give you innings just to
Right.
kind of keep you in a game. You were just wanting to give your offense a chance. And eventually you felt like they could give you 5, 6, even more runs than that, especially in the postseason when they're locked in, the starters are playing every day, if that's what you really needed. Whereas
Yeah.
in 2022, the offense is good, but they just don't have the pieces they did a year ago. So you've seen them win a lot more games, like today, Wednesday, the 2-1 game against Detroit, where you have to really pitch well and execute. And they've done that because they have 2 Cy Young contenders and Verlander and Valdez, and you have these young guys that are coming on strong. We talked about Cristain Javier, now we're talking about Hunter Brown. But that's where I think in the playoffs, you've got to err even more on the side of these super talented guys. Because in 2022, when you're going to the best of the best, the Yankees, and then we hope, probably the Dodgers, the Braves, the Mets, someone like that in the World Series, if the Astros advance, then you're going to need the high end stuff. You're going to need pitching to win you more games in 2022 than in 2021. The good news to this point, that's exactly what has happened. But to continue that, you're going to need to gamble on guys that just have the raw stuff, the high end velocity, the swing and miss. That's Cristain Javier, and that's also Hunter Brown. And so, you're not going to say he's a postseason lock based on 2 starts, especially because the 2 teams he's done it against, the
Right.
Tigers and the Rangers, are not very good. But I think should it continue, I think the Astros are going to be very open to having him on the postseason roster, especially because he's a guy that a lot of the contenders have not really faced before. They're going to be facing for the first time potentially in the playoffs, and that might even help more because they're not really going to have much in the way of tape on him or prior experience, and sometimes that can work in favor of the pitcher.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think with Hunter Brown, the conversation now just becomes like, where does he fit in? And I remember seeing him. I've watched him pitch many games at Sugarland where he came in the 5th inning, or he came in and they did the whole piggyback start and did phenomenal.
Right.
I mean,
He
I
has
mean, he
experience at it.
could,
Yep.
and if you have that game, or the game before you have to use 3 or 4 of your relief pitchers in a short series, then you got Hunter Brown in there. He could easily go 5, and he could get ramped up, and he could touch that 98, that 99. So before we move on to talking about our final point, talking about Yordan Alvarez, I want to mention that if you cannot make it to the Astros game, and you just want to hang out with some friends, and you want to watch the Astros game, listen to Todd Cowles and Jeff Blum and Julia and all the great, people they have on AT&T, you need to go to Hooters of NASA. They have the best wings. They've got the best brews. You can hang out with your buds. They got the world famous Hooters girls. They've got 15 different sauces. They've got so many options. Like, I could name them all, but it would be like a 10-minute read. That's how great this place is. Go for happy hour. They have happy hour specials from 3 to 6 Monday through Friday. They have Thursdays. It's called Thursday. So check that out. come hang out with the Locked On Astros boys as we hang out and watch the Astros with great grub and brews. You need to go to I-45 South, exit 528 for great wings and best service from the world famous Hooters girls. They're conveniently located near the NASA Valley Shopping Center, south of Baybrook Mall in Webster, Texas. Come see them for lunch, after work, or dinner to celebrate any upcoming special occasion. UFC fights, whatever you want to watch. 20796 Gulf Freeway. Hooters or NASA, tell them Locked On Astros sent you. You'll get a free basket of fried pickles. All right, so let's talk about this. Yordan Alvarez, and let's kind of wrap things up on this. Yordan Alvarez was out because he thought he was scheduled as a day off. Dusty Baker gets on the mic and does Dusty things. I love Dusty Baker. He's audio gold. He says, "Oh no, he's out because his hands are sore." And and then the word gets back to I believe Alvarez, and he's like,
Yeah.
"No, my hands aren't sore. It's a scheduled
It
off day.
was
I thought."
it was actually very interesting because according to Chandler Rome, Jordan actually asked to speak to the media. And if you're around players, which I know you are, like players don't want to talk to the media that often. So for a player to want to clarify something, that's a pretty rare thing. So I thought that was interesting in and of itself that Jordan wanted to clarify that no, it's not the hand. It was just a regularly scheduled off day.
And that, that has been kind of one of those mysteries. You're hearing more and more talk about Dusty Baker wanting to come back. You're hearing
Mm.
all this different talk about James Click, and Kyle Tucker hit another home run. And so what do people say? Oh, well, go ahead and pay Kyle Tucker. Go ahead and give him an extension. And so you got all these things going in. What has been your assessment? And I think we'll wrap up on this. What has been your assessment on Yordan Alvarez? Do you think some of it's mental? I think some of it's mental. I
Yeah.
think because he had such a hard charging, high powered offensive year, that's
Yeah.
hard to maintain. Even at 24, he's still young.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's really taken on a lot. His parents are here. I think that adds something to it. That's gotta be. And I'm not convinced anymore that he's hurt. I really was convinced that maybe his top hand was up with it.
Hmm.
But what's
I think some of
what's
it, he does have more pressure on him because of some of those offensive limitations that we were just discussing a few minutes ago. The lineup is not quite as deep as it was a year ago. No Correa nor
true?
Brantley. So to be in peak form, you do need more from Jordan Alvarez. The slumps from Jordan, which we saw a little bit in August, hit harder. Um, than they would maybe a year ago. So I do think
Right,
that puts more pressure on him. And I also do think, yeah, there is a mental side to this. Can I trust the hand to fully extend, to commit on my swings when you've had an injury like that? I think there is a mental side to it for sure. I think the good news of the situation with Jordan, and as far as today, my guess, keep in mind that game today started at noon Houston time. I know it was one out there, but as far as Houston time, what these guys are used to, a noon start is crazy early. So these guys basically just rolled out of bed and had to go straight to, the park to play a game. My guess is that's part of what sort of contributed to the lethargic offense in a 2-1 game. Thank goodness Kyle Tucker had that home run. But
right,
my guess is that a lot of these medical decisions are above the manager's pay grade. Like the manager will make a decision if I'm going to give a guy a day off here or there. But if it's part of like, injury maintenance or coming off an injury, which is the case with Yorda, these decisions get made at the trainer level and above, talking with, the James Clicks of the world as well. And my guess is that, Dusty just didn't have a chance to, talk to them based on how early the game was before he had to do his pregame media session. And so my guess is there's not a, today it's just a sort of a simple misunderstanding, and Dusty
right,
just, sort of, and it might not even be totally untrue. It could be that, it's part of a maintenance program for the hand, and Dusty just simply, extrapolated it to, oh, it's the hand. And so it's different if it's just overall maintenance versus is the
right.
hand actively hurting him. And I think that's what Jordan wanted to clarify. But in general, I don't. I've been encouraged because we've seen, especially if they manage it well, and keep in mind the Astros are going to have the wild card round off. He responds really well to time off, and the Astros are going to have about a week off between when the regular season ends and their postseason in the ALDS because they're going to have the bye begins.
Right.
Like we saw when they put him on the IL in July, they gave him the 15 days off. At the end of July, he was crazy good, and that Yankees doubleheader, this sweep in Seattle,
Yeah,
his
I was there.
OPS was
Yeah,
over 1,000. And then the 9 or 10 games, however long it's been since he came back in the Anaheim series to start September, 9 or 10 games since, his OPS has been above 1,000 again. So it's pretty clear that once he gets some time off, if they manage it properly, he can not just, get on base, but he can drive the ball. He can hit for power. That's what having an OPS above 1,000 means. You're not getting that just through on base percentage. You're having to get doubles. You're having to get homers. And if they manage it right, he can still be peak Yordan. And that's what people overlook. You go back, a lot of people, the Astros have never confirmed that that was initially a situation with a Hammett. A lot of people, the sports injury doctors on Twitter strongly suspect it is. They never confirmed. And, I don't know. The bottom line is, you can be annoyed, but you shouldn't be enraged. If the Astros want to be coy with it, if they think it's their competitive advantage to, not be totally forthcoming, then that's certainly their
I'm like,
prerogative.
maybe they want teams going into the playoffs thinking
Yeah.
that Jordan has major hand
Yeah.
issues and
y-
they,
you know, you can you can want the Astros to be more forthcoming than discomfort. I certainly do, but it's like at the same time you have to understand their position. If they're not required to, and they think for some reason it's a competitive advantage, then okay, you have to sort of you can be annoyed but not enraged. That's the way that I would phrase it.
I hear you.
But
It's definitely chess, not checkers at that point. It's definitely
yeah,
one of
and
those things
sometimes
where
nuance like that gets lost on social media. But to sum up where I'm going with this, a lot of people have sort of said every time this hand issue comes up, oh, and if it is the Hammett, then why in June or July couldn't you have just had the Hammett surgery? Because it typically takes guys out for about 6 weeks and then he'd be back by the playoffs. Here's the thing. Google power after Hammett surgery. For most guys that have the Hammett, it takes them until the next season before they get their power back. Even if they are capable of playing, because you're taking a
mm,
part of that bone out, it really takes a toll, especially on power hitters. The most, Astros example I can think of, look at 2018 Yuli Gurriel. When you look at Yuli Gurriel's peak years, which I'd say would be 2017 through 2021, let's not count 2020 because 2020 is a season you should throw out for any number of reasons, small sample,
right,
no spring training, no fans, et cetera, et cetera. Of those other 4 years in Yuli's prime, 2018 was by far his worst in slugging percentage and
right,
power. What was different in 2018? He had the Hammett surgery in spring training. And even though he came back in April, he never got the power stroke back that year. It took him until 2019. So, yeah, if you had that Hammett surgery in June or July, and we don't even know for sure that that's what the issue is, but let's just assume that, the social media doctors that are taking an educated guess are correct. And there was a report, by the way, when he first injured it in the White Sox series, Buster Olney for ESPN said that the Astros were fearful of a Hammett injury, so that plays
mm,
into it as well. Um, let's say they have this surgery. The odds are you're not going to have peak Yordan back until 2023. That's just what the numbers say from guys who have had that surgery. Whereas the route that they're going, it's pretty clear that if you give him rest, he can tap into that peak form and maybe just delay the surgery if that's what he needs. And maybe he doesn't,
right.
knock on wood. Hopefully it's not the case. But if he does, delay it till the offseason, give him a full offseason to recover. And I think the bottom line is for the Astros to win a World Series in 2022, you need peak Yordan Alvarez. And if he were to have the Hammett surgery, you're almost certainly not going to have peak Yordan. It's
Yeah,
just the sample size shows that guys just don't recover their power that quickly. Whereas with rest, with maintenance, and that's what they seem to be doing. And keep in mind, going into the playoffs, you're going to have that week between the regular
right.
season and the playoffs. You're also going to have off days during each series, the way you don't during the regular season. I think they're hoping that, with enough maintenance, and to this point, he has responded well when he's gotten some time off, that you can keep peak Yordan. And that gives you a better shot at having the Yordan you need to win a World Series. It's just so much more complex. The people, every time this comes up, says, well, why didn't you just have surgery? Because the surgery, even if he comes back, would probably take away your shot at
Right.
having the version of Yordan Alvarez you need to win the World Series. This is your best shot at having that Yordan. And to this point in September, he's given you the production that you need to do what we hope they do in October.
And that's why we bring on Ben Dubose to talk Locked on Astros, to talk to Locked on Astros. Ben, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time. I love hearing your opinions. I love following you on Twitter. If you guys don't follow him at Ben Dubose. It's BenDubose, capital B, capital D, and capital B. Follow me at Htown Wheelhouse or follow us anywhere you get your social media. This has been a great conversation. The Astros sweep the Tigers. We will see Justin Verlander take the mound this weekend. That will be fun. So Ben, just so you said Saturday you'll be covering the Astros, right?
Well, covering the game. I got to
Covering
look
the
back.
game.
I think I may be covering the A's, but yeah,
Okay.
I'll be there regardless. Yeah.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Well, thank you, Ben, for standing in for Eric and for all of us at Locked On Astros Nation. Y'all have a good one. Check us out. Make sure you go subscribe to our channel. And this has been another great edition of Locked On Astros.